Good morning, students. I hope you're safe at home. Giving birth is not only a painful procedure, even though it is a painful procedure, it is the most beautiful experience. So, today we'll be dealing with something regarding the puparium. I've already explained you what is the postnatal period. The time from the delivery till 45 days, we consider it as a postnatal period. So that is also called as a puparium. So there are various abnormal things which may happen during this period if you are not taking a proper care of a postnatal mother. So each and every one, whoever working in the clinical area, should keep in mind we have to give utmost care for a pregnant lady as well as during the intranatal period and also during the postnatal period. If not given a proper care and if there was any negligence, there are chances that the lady may land up in a postnatal complication. So today we'll be dealing with the abnormal puparium. In abnormal puparium, we'll be dealing with the first case, that is a puparial sepsis. Good morning. The first slide shows the condition of the world today. Save life from corona. But really we don't know how to save a life from corona. It's increasing day by day. Anyway, we have to wear masks, wash our hands, keep distance. Today we'll be moving on to a new chapter, that is abnormal puparium. So in abnormal puparium there are various conditions which we are going to study in detail. So first we'll see the condition, that is puparial sepsis. So today we'll be dealing with the puparial sepsis, which also include the puparial phyrexia. So in abnormal puparium, the first condition we'll see about the puparial phyrexia. So first we'll see what is the definition of puparial phyrexia. So as it is understood, it is a rise in temperature. So if there is a rise in temperature above 100.4 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius or more, measured on a separate occasion at 24 hours apart, that is within the first 10 days, that is excluding the first 24 hours, after 24 hours till 10 days. If the mother is suffering with a rise in temperature, then you can consider it as a puparial phyrexia. Next we'll see what are the causes leading to this increased temperature, or which is puparial phyrexia. So the causes are the puparial sepsis, urinary tract infection, there are certain breast complication, infection of laparotomy wound, intercurrent infection, thrombophlebitis, or it may be due to the unknown origin. The lady may be suffering, or the postnatal mother is suffering with the increase or rise in temperature, and so these are the certain causes which are leading to a puparial phyrexia. So first we'll see the condition, that is puparial sepsis. So that is one of the cause which is leading to a puparial phyrexia or the fever in postpartum period. So what do you understand by the word puparial sepsis? Or first we'll see the definition of puparial sepsis. So sepsis, as you understand, it is an infection. So an infection of the genital tract which occurs as a complication of delivery is termed as puparial sepsis. So what are the causes of this puparial sepsis which is leading to a puparial phyrexia? So there are the causes is categorized as predisposing factors, antepartum factors and intrapartum factors. First we'll see certain predisposing factors of puparial sepsis. So what are the reason? Like condition lowering the resistant, general or it may be local, condition favoring the multiplication and increased virulence of the organism, introduction of organism from outside, increased prevalence of organism resistant to antibiotic and chemotherapy. So these are the certain predisposing factor which may further lead to puparial sepsis. What are the antepartum factors? Malnutrition, preeclampsia, premature rupture of the membrane, chronic debilitating illness, sexual intercourse during the late pregnancy. These may be the reason which may lead to a puparial sepsis. That's why we say always, if the patient comes with a premature rupture of the membrane, we have to start with the antibiotics in order to prevent prevent certain infection in the postpartum period. And what are the intrapartum factors? Intrapartum factors include introduction of sepsis into the upper genital tract during internal examination, especially after the rupture of the membrane or during the manipulative delivery. That's why we keep a gap when we do a per vaginal examination, and we have to reduce the number of per vaginal examination. And while doing a PV, that is, at least there should be a 4 hours gap when we do a PV, and it should be done in a aseptic technique. You have to wear this PV gloves, that is a sterile gloves, and see that you clean the vulva, and then you have to do the vaginal examination. Even during insertion of the catheter also, you have to follow a very strict aseptic technique, so that the lady will not suffer in the postpartum period due to certain complication. And the other intrapartum factors include dehydration and ketoacidosis during the labor. That's why even though if the lady is NPO, we continuously give a IV fluid so that we can keep the lady hydrated. And traumatic operative delivery, these are the causes for infection. Hemorrhage, which may lead to antepartum or postpartum hemorrhage, may lead to a infection. Retained bits of placental tissue or membranes, if the bits of placenta tissue is remained, it may lead to a infection. Placenta previa, that is placental site lying close to the vagina. So these are the certain factors which are leading to a puerperal sepsis. So it is divided under 3 headings, that is predisposing factors, antepartum factors, what are the factors in the antenatal period which may lead to a postpartum sepsis or puerperal sepsis, and mainly the intrapartum factors, where we have to take a very good care so that the patient will not land up with the puerperal sepsis. Next we see the organisms. The organism responsible for the puerperal sepsis may be aerobic bacteria or anaerobic. Under aerobic, there may be a Staphylococcus pyogenes, E. coli, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas, non-hemolytic Streptococcus, and Staphylococcus aureus. In anaerobic, there may be anaerobic Streptococcus, Bacteroides, Clostridium welchii, and Clostridium tetani. So these are the organisms which are responsible for the puerperal sepsis. So in the antenatal period itself, when the patient is coming for the antenatal examination, we have to do all the blood investigations so that to rule out if there is any infection, as well as the lady can also we should also take a high vaginal swab for culture, so to rule out whether there is any infection or not. If you suspect the lady for infection, then still you have to send the sample to rule out the infection, and accordingly the patient has to be treated. So next is the mode of infection, how the infection spreads. So mode of infection, the puerperal sepsis is essentially a wound infection, placental site, laceration of the genital tract, or cesarean section wound may be infected. So it is also now in hospital settings we have to note down if any patient comes with the infection, that is in the postpartum period, it has to be noted to the health authority. It has to be the census will be taken that how many patients had a postpartum infection, and a study will be done based on that. So we should be very careful while dealing with the lady who is in the antenatal period, in the intranatal period, as well as in the postpartum period. So they will keep a record or the data of the ladies who are getting infected in the postnatal period. Even there are lots of ladies who will come with the cesarean section wound infection. So this is also one data which has to be maintained, that is the infection of the cesarean section site. So which has to be reported to the health authority to find out the rate of people who are getting infected because of the cesarean section. So all these things are also plays a vital role in maintaining the health records. The mode of infection, it is under endogenous, autogenous and exogenous. What is endogenous? Endogenous is what happens is when the organism are present, it's already in the genital tract before the delivery itself, and it becomes pathogenic in the condition. So those are called as endogenous, which is already present and becomes later on becomes pathogenic, and then there will be a sepsis infection, and later on the patient will be showing the symptoms of increased temperature. That is called as endogenous, which is already present. What next one is autogenous. What is autogenous? The organism is present elsewhere in the body. It migrates to the genital organ either through the bloodstream or by the droplet infection, or are conveyed to the site by the patient herself or her attendants, like Streptococcus, Beta hemolyticus, E. coli, Clostridium welchii and Staphylococcus are migrated from the septic throat, feces and skin infection. So these are called as autogenous. It is already somewhere on the other part of the body, then it is migrating into the genital tract and creating infection. This is called as autogenous. And the third one is exogenous. In exogenous, what happens? The infection is contracted from some other source, that is outside the patient, not within the patient. Endogenous and autogenous is within the patient itself, whereas exogenous, you are getting the infection from outside. The organisms are introduced by the attendants, usually from the respiratory tract, like from, it may be from the doctors, it may be from the nurses, or it may be from any of the health assistants who are treating the patient. The infection may be dust-borne or a droplet, may occur during the internal examination, contaminated linens, blankets. So all this comes under the exogenous. So this is also very careful. That's why in the hospital we have a separate department, that is infection control. So any such cases who is presenting with the infection, so they have a particular time, like when the patient got infected, how long the length of the stay of the patient was there in the hospital, so who has inserted the catheter, when the catheter was inserted, when it was removed, all this data will be mentioned, as well as when you inserted the IV cannula, how many days the IV cannula stayed, whether you are changing the cannula. There is a certain time limit for cannula, how many days you have to keep, like 3 days for cannula. IV said daily you have to change, and for catheter you have, if it is an indwelling catheter, you can keep it for 15 days. So according to the policies and procedure you have to follow in order to prevent any infection. Even the linens, it has to be changed. If the infection control department, the main work is to prevent the infection. If any infection is found in the patient, then you can see that the infection control nurse has to be reported, and it will be mentioned, and it stays as a remark for the whole organization. So all the things which are dealt with the patient has to be maintained properly. Next is the clinical features. In clinical features, it is under 3 headings, that is local infection, uterine infection and spreading infection. We will see one by one. In local infection, what happens is there is a slight rise of temperature, generalized malaise or headache. The local wound becomes red and swollen. The pus may form, which leads to the disruption of the wound. So this is the signs of clinical feature of local infection. So the wound becomes red. It may be a cesarean site infection, or it may be a episiotomy infection. There may be a formation of pus. This you can see in a local infection in the site itself. Uterine infection. The uterine infection, it is divided into mild and severe. In mild, there is a pyrexia of variable degree with proportionate rise in pulse rate. And you can see that the lochia discharge become offensive, copious and often red. And the uterus is subinvoluted, tender and softer than usual. In severe, you can see the onset is acute, that is sudden, with the rise of temperature, which is also associated with chills and rigor. And also you can see that the pulse rate is rapid. So these are the symptoms which you can see in the uterine. The third one is a spreading infection. So in spreading infection, you can see there may be it spreads like from the local it goes to a it spreads, the infection gets spread. So in that you can see there may be a parametritis, pelvic peritonitis, you can see general peritonitis, thrombophlebitis and septicemia. So these are the infection which goes spreads these are the certain infection which is there in the spreading infection. So it from the local it spread to the system. So that is called as so these are the three infection which comes under the clinical features, which you can list down under local infection, uterine infection and spreading infection. Next we'll see how you can investigate. So in investigation, history anyway, you have to collect the history, the condition of the patient, and also if she has delivered, where she has delivered, how she has delivered, when she has delivered, all these things has to be collected. If she has delivered in the same hospital, then obviously you will have a file, and in that file everything will be recorded. So you have to take the previous file in which all her records will be maintained. So in history, that is antenatal history, you have to collect intranatal history and also the postpartum details. All this has to be collected. So in antenatal history, you have to collect about antenatal history, whether she was anemic, there was any preeclampsia, whether she had antepartum hemorrhage, presence of septic foci in teeth, gums, tonsils, any debilitating disease like heart disease, diabetes, tuberculosis, chronic nephritis, urinary tract infection, all this history, whatever the disease condition she is suffering with. Anyway, when you are taking the history, there will be details of history collection, that is initial assessment form. In initial assessment form, the system wise, the history, everything, it is if you're in the clinical setting, I have already said you to go through that form, the initial assessment form, which has to be filled by the doctors and also by the nurses. So you will not miss the details, because it is already in the format. So you can it's a template form, so you can just fill up all the details of a history, whether it is present or not. So all the history in the antenatal period you have to collect, and also you have to collect the intranatal history, like the time of rupture of membrane, the number of the internal examination done outside and inside the hospital, the duration of labor, the method of delivery, the nature of intrauterine manipulation, any trauma to the genital tract which was repaired or not. All this history you have to collect. If she has delivered in the same hospital, then anyway you will know the history which will be already mentioned in the record. Still you have to ask with the patient. And the postnatal details, in postnatal details of the nature of fever and the associated symptoms related to the site of lesion if present, all this has to be collected. Next you have to do the clinical examination. In clinical examination, you have to anyway check the vital signs of the patient, which has to be checked frequently, and it has to be recorded. And systemic examination, like you have to do a system wise examination, throat, breast, lungs, heart, liver, spleen and legs, all this has to be examined. Abdominal examination, you have to see for the involution of the uterus, and internal examination to note the character of lochia, the condition of the perineal wound, and bimanual examination to find out any pelvic pathology. All these things has to be done. Both the external examination, which has to be done by the doctors as well as the nurse, as well as you have to do the doctor will do the internal examination also. So all these details, that is history collection and clinical examination, has to be included. And she can order for the doctor can order for the investigation to rule out the infection, that is high vaginal swab, endocervical swab for culture has to be sent. And also you can collect the midstream urine for a urine analysis, and you can also send the urine for culture and sensitivity. And you can send blood for total and differential count of white cells and estimation of hemoglobin. And also you can send the blood culture. In blood culture also you can send both for aerobic and anaerobic. Even in the throat culture and high vaginal swab also you can send aerobic and anaerobic. I think I have already explained you that we will get for the sending for aerobic and anaerobic blood culture, you will get a two bottles, which is already mentioned in that in the bottle itself, which is for aerobic and anaerobic. Accordingly, you have to withdraw the blood, and you have to fill it in that bottle, and you have to send it. Same is applied in the throat swab or high vaginal swab collection. That is, in that also you will get separate the tubes for collecting the aerobic and the anaerobic samples. Next, we see the prophylaxis. So, prevention is always stays better than a cure. So, whatever it is, whatever the condition, first we have to know, and instead of taking a risk, better to prevent it. That is a must and foremost thing. So, this prophylaxis, it is we can study under antenatal period, intranatal, and the postnatal period. What are the prophylaxis we can take? Usually, you might have seen in the local area itself, especially here in Udupi, you can see how the postnatal mothers are taken care of in that 40 days, how they are treated very well. They are not allowed to go out, they have to wear a clean clothes. They will be one dadi will be appointed with her, so that she is the one who will be taking care of, giving bath, taking care of the newborn. Even though they are not there, but they know the, like, they have the concept that the baby should be clean, the mother should be clean, they have to give a proper food at a proper time, and you can, and regarding the nutrition values, the different medicines they prepare and give. So anyway, the ladies are taken very good care. So these are all preventive measures which can be very helpful for the lady, instead of going for a infection. So in the antenatal period, what and all things you can advise to the lady or take care is, or the as a nurse you have to do in the hospital. So detect and eradicate the septic focus, especially located in the teeth, gums, tonsils, middle ear or skin, to maintain or improve the health status of the patient. That is, by in antenatal period you should have a regular examination. Whatever the medicines which has been prescribed by the doctor has to be taken, and whatever the nutritional concept which has been given by the dietitian in the hospital has to be followed. And vaginal examination during pregnancy, especially in the last month, should be kept to a minimum and should be carried out with a strict surgical asepsis, which I already said you. And douching should not be done during the time of the it should be avoided during the time antenatal period, and intercourse should be avoided during the last 2 months to prevent the introduction of organism like streptococcus, and the patient should avoid contact with the person suffering from the infectious disease. The patient should take care about her personal hygiene, which is foremost thing. So these are the things, these are the small things which is better taken care rather than ending up with a complication. In intranatal period, what you can do? So in intranatal period, all the stuffs, anyway, in intranatal period the lady will be in the labor room itself. So all the doctors and the nurses who are attending the patient has to be checked first. They should be away from all this infection. Even in the labor room, it is it's very strict that aseptic technique has to be followed. You have to wear all the like protective, personal protective equipments, so that you will not get the infection, neither the patient will be away from the infection. So whoever the person who is working in the hospital setup, in the labor, wherever it is, they has to undergo a medical checkup, then only they are allowed to work. Initially when we join for a duty itself, we will have a medical checkup done. So later on, if you are medically fit, then you are allowed to work in the hospital. Even if you are suffering with any of the infection, immediately it has to be treated, and you have to make sure that you will be not working in the labor room if you are having any infection. So all staff attending the labor cases should have a nasal and throat swab taken before attending to their duties. The delivery should be conducted using a full surgical asepsis. I hope you have seen how they are conducting the deliveries. And patient having respiratory tract or skin infection should have swabs taken for culture and should be admitted in a septic ward. Yes, we have also a septic ward in the labor room in the that BR Life Hospital. You can see there's a special room where there's a separate room written as a septic room, so where the infected lady can be admitted. The patient is instructed not to touch the vulva during the labor or thereafter. The membrane should be kept preserved as long as possible. Vaginal examination to be restricted to minimum. Traumatic vaginal delivery should be preferably be avoided. Laceration of the genital tract should be repaired promptly. Excessive blood loss during the delivery should be replaced promptly by blood transfusion to improve the general body resistance. Prophylactic antibiotic. Appropriate antibiotic is administered prophylactically in cases of premature rupture of the membrane, having prolonged labor or following the traumatic delivery. So, these things you have to follow and keep in mind in order to avoid the complication. What you can do in postpartum period? Aseptic precautions should be taken for at least 1 week following the delivery. So, very aseptic technique has to be taken. Too many visitors should not be allowed, especially in the hospital settings, and sterilized sanitary pads should be used and changed frequently to prevent lochia to decompose and become offensive on the pad. You should advise to the lady how often or how frequently she has to change the pad. And bedpan should be sterilized after each use. The vulva and the perineum are to be swabbed with the weak antiseptic solution after each time following the urination or defecation, which has to be explained to the patient. And also most of you have given the episiotomy care health education. Hope you know all this, how to take care of the episiotomy and how frequently she has to change the pad and how clean she has to keep herself, that is the personal hygiene. And infected babies, if the babies are infected, then they have to be placed in the isolated room. And anyway, the hospital should be first of all neat and clean, that is the floors should be kept clean. Anyway, for that there will be housekeeping department, and it, as a nurse, when you're working in the hospital, you have to make sure that the hospital floor is clean, and it comes under the management side. See that it's out of infection. See that the housekeeping staff has cleaned the rooms, she has mopped properly the floor, what when she has done it and how often she is doing. All these things also has to be supervised along with your work. So that's what about prophylaxis. Next we'll see the treatment. In case the patient has landed up with the puerperal sepsis, what you can do? So the treatment is, in general treatment, you can see the patient should be placed in a separate ward having adequate light and ventilation. Dietary restriction may not be imposed in mild infection, but if it is a severe infection, a light, easily digestible diet can be prescribed, and adequate fluid and electrolyte balance must be maintained if necessary by the IV route, and sufficient rest has to be given. Analgesics can be prescribed, the sedatives can be prescribed. And bowel must be kept open with milk of magnesia. Usually the nurses in routine on daily basis, they will ask in the morning that whether the patient has passed motion or not. It has to be asked. If the patient has not passed the motion, usually some patients, they are feeling shy to say that they did not pass the motion, but as a nurse, and even in the TPR chart, you can see in the lower side bottom end, you can see that you have to write whether the patient has passed motion or not. It has to be asked and written properly whether she has passed or not. If she has not passed, it has to be informed to the doctor, and she will prescribe the medication accordingly. And anemia should be corrected based on the HB level. The doctor will advise either the IV route, the tablet form, or if necessary blood transfusion has to be advised. A chart noting pulse, respiration, temperature, fluid intake and output should be maintained. All the vital parameters along with the intake output has to be monitored strictly. It should not be written in a own way. It has to be monitored properly, and you have to write exactly what is the intake output and as well as the vital signs. Appropriate treatment should be instituted to prevent a spread of infection outside the pelvis. So, it should be managed promptly. And the next treatment, anyway, the antibiotic has to be prescribed. The specific treatment is concentrated to the judicious use of appropriate antibiotic. Based on the culture report, the doctor will prescribe the appropriate antibiotic. So, the treatment should be continued until the infection is controlled by at least 10 days. So, this is the based on that the antibiotic has to be prescribed. And there is an option for a surgical treatment based on the condition of the patient. There is a very little role of major surgery in the treatment of puerperal sepsis, but there are like if there is a, in a case of perineal wound, if the stitches of the perineal wound may not have the stitches of the perineal wound may have to be removed to facilitate a drainage of pus and relieve pain. If there is a formation of pus or the patient is having a very severe pain, and then there are you may have to cut the stitches, or sometimes you can see also there may be a gaping of the wound because of the infection. So later on you have to dress the wound and dress on the wound with a mild antiseptic solution, followed by application of any antiseptic ointment or the powder which has been advised. After the infection is controlled, at the later days again the suturing of the area has to be done. And if there is a infected retained products, then you have to remove it as early as possible under the cover of antibiotics by digital exploration of the uterine cavity, and pelvic abscess should be drained by a colpotomy. So, these are the surgical treatment, that is mainly if there is a formation of the pus, when there is a infection of the wound. Surgical treatment is essential. So, that is about the puerperal sepsis. So, today we have seen about the puerperal pyrexia. So, what are the reasons which are leading to puerperal pyrexia? There are various reasons I have said. So, today we have seen the puerperal sepsis. The puerperal sepsis is one cause which is leading to a puerperal pyrexia. So, in puerperal sepsis we have seen the definition of puerperal sepsis. We have seen what are the factors which are leading for the puerperal sepsis, that is predisposing factor, antepartum factor and intrapartum factor. We have seen what are the organisms both aerobic and anaerobic. Next we have seen the mode of infection. So, the mode of infection is through endogenous, autogenous and exogenous. Next we have seen the clinical features. The clinical features may be exhibited in the form of local infection, uterine infection and spreading infection. Next we have seen the investigation. How you can investigate, that is by collecting the history and by doing a clinical examination and the lab investigation. And next we have seen what are the prophylaxis, how you can prevent it in the earlier period itself, that is what antenatal care you have to take, intranatal care and the postnatal care. What are the things which you have to we have to follow in order to prevent the infection. Finally, if the lady has landed up with the puerperal sepsis, what treatment you can do. Under treatment, what are the general treatment you can place, and what are the antibiotics you have to prescribe, and if the surgical treatment is necessary, then you have to go for a surgical treatment. So, these are the so this is about the puerperal sepsis. Hope you have understood it. Please listen to the class, and if you have any doubts you can ask me. Thank you.